In my lifetime, I've seen a lot of things come across the news. I've also enjoyed a lot of beautiful films that Hollywood has produced, and they've gone all different places around the nation and the globe to produce for us incredible entertainment. The real question is, where does the entertainment line get drawn? And at what point does that entertainment line get crossed? In life, we have people who like to play role-playing games. We have people who like to play board games. We have people who like to play chess and love to get into checkmate with people, but we also have people who like to monstrously stalk, harm, and harass others. In our film from Hollywood, we see lots of opportunities to learn about what happens to people, how their lives are impacted when cybercrime hits them is usually something for commercials. It's not always talked about in the news other than this is how you protect yourself, but it doesn't always really protect us from the predators of the land. The liars of the land, as I often call it in some of my pastoral work that I've been trying to put out, but some of my best work, as you know, has been deleted. In life, we have people who don't understand religious law, meaning they don't remember why the U.S. Constitution was created in the first place. They don't have any recollection in their family lineage for how did America get formed and why are we still fighting for rights today. The reason we're still fighting for human rights today is because most people are not educated in the international treaties of our land that our presidents sign or that were signed long ago into practice. You see, in the land, we have lots of new things that go on in terms of technology and opportunities to learn those technological skills from classes, from schools, from high schools, from even colleges and universities. But what we know in the world of creative arts is that most technologies, software in particular, taught in college and university are still 4 years behind what is going on because there's the practicality of having to produce a textbook for most classes. Now, some of that is changing. We have more textbooks coming available online through Amazon and other places where you can read a book online. But if you're old school like me, you prefer to read a book that is literally got pages to it. We also like to be able to mark our books practically to say, hey, not only is this my book and it belongs to my reasonably accommodating library collection in my own personal home or professional office, but openly we also use our own highlighters, our own pen markings, our own color coding to mark pages so that when we're putting a presentation on professionally, we can go back to those pages, find those things and those quotes that we remember from those authors so well quickly to put into our work. In my life, I've had lots of works stolen from my life is true. I've had an entire lifetime of, if you will, of martial arts materials gone missing. I've had practically an entire 15 years worth of Japanese language instruction methodologies go disappearing from my hard drives. And sadly, there was only one hard drive that held it all. I was never able to get a backup copy done because of all the crazy things going on in my life is true. Well, I have a few pages here and there, and while I could reproduce it all on the spot, literally, if someone gave me a computer, it's not the same as what I put together to put together my own intellectual property rights, my own copyright authority on the work that I developed to help teach people of all ages and shapes and sizes, literally the Japanese language in a more sophisticated, sensei-driven, if you will, instructor-driven, that is, training method, so that they could spontaneously combust, is usually what I joke about, but they could spontaneously converse in a foreign land, whether they were traveling for just business purposes like some of my Eli Lilly clients, or openly if they were young teenagers who loved anime and manga and wanted to learn the language so that they could listen better in the cartoons they like to borrow from the local libraries or they like to purchase online from Amazon. When I'm talking about these things, I'm talking about really the rights of being human, the rights to have self-expression, the rights to learn about others' lives without our lives being impacted terribly deeply. If we circle back up to the beginning of my conversation on film, we've learned a lot about stalking and laws, not only from our news reporters who do a good job talking about those incidents and the tragedies from them, but also from the incredible entertaining actors like J-Lo and others who've done some amazing work trying to teach us how to protect ourselves from the monsters of the world. The challenge we have today is that sometimes the monsters represent people of faith. Those people of faith sort of forget the First Amendment that says that all people have the right to practice their own fellowship, their own assembly, their own version of their concept of God, whatever that may be. However that faith practice is handled is really up to the individual. When we have people who monstrously steal our religious objects, like it happened to me recently, it's sort of outlandish. It's also a federal offense. It is something investigated, I believe, by the FBI, but I am not proficient in all the law enforcement lines and delineations that separate one group from another. What I do know is that technologists do work in all fields. And practically, there are cybercrime folks who just love to do it for the thrill of getting through a system. We've seen those shows, those videos, those movies with people like starring in it like Angelina Jolie, who was a hacker. And that might have even been the title of the film, but I'm not always super with all the names. I guess my real point in talking about this is that a life can be destroyed in a matter of seconds or a matter of years by people who mob together, who stalk with purpose, and who literally violate laws of every kind. This is why people are outraged about the immigrants right now. It's not that they don't feel that human rights are not important. It's that they feel that any person who comes to the land illegally, without a lawful way, meaning they didn't pay for a visa or a scholarship to go to school or something to that regard, that they're just trying to walk across the border, puts them in the position of lying through most of their life here in America. It puts them in a position of literally tapping into the resources that are for our actual citizens. It's not about being impartial to people of different lands and ethnicities, as many presidential candidates are talking about. Even Trump sort of spouts that a little bit. It's really not about hate in that regard. It's about the fact that we have human resources, we have capital expenses, we have expenditures of food, and we have people who are literally ravaging our farmlands without the farmers even knowing it, because farmers can't be in the field every second of the day is true. Because they hire people seasonally is also true. Because the people who come here from foreign lands just see it as food, as opposed to a reforestation sort of methodology, and I apologize for not knowing the agricultural terminology of that industry to discuss it well. But I can remember traveling through the countryside, enjoying my time, just driving through the farmlands and looking at the beauty of what was being grown by those farmers that feed us here in Indiana, and literally wondering, what is that group of people who are definitely from a foreign land doing in those fields so quickly that it looks like they don't belong there? The challenge is we don't know who to report our information to when we see something that just doesn't feel right socially or personally or professionally, or somehow in our soul we're just like, there's something odd here. It's another matter entirely, though, that when we try to elicit information from people in order to harm a life. It's another matter entirely when we decide to take a person's lawful name into the legal system to harm their life because we're too immature, too impractical, too impossible, or too impatient to literally say, hey, we need to have a talk about what's going on here because there's been some confusion on my part, some overstepping of bounds on your part, and openly I'd like to clear this up before it becomes a real problem for either one of us. That's the most regardful way to handle any communication breakdown, but openly we do it in a public space. We do it over a meal. We break bread together, we talk together, we laugh together, we drink together perhaps, whether it's a libation or whether it's just a set of iced tea, it doesn't really matter. It's the breaking of bread and the talking over food that help people to heal and help people to know each other better. It also lets us know whether or not the person has enough social etiquette to know whether or not they'll be good enough to take home to mom or dad in those kind of loving relationships. But in life, men and women fall in love all the time. There are also men who fall in love with a girl and stalk them inappropriately. We know this, and it's a lack of social training that usually causes that. There are also old-fashioned men that try to win a girl's heart by sending creative gifts the old-fashioned way that we had long ago in the land. That is not stalking. It is a man professing his love in the most creative ways he can literally think of to make a girl laugh, to make a girl cry, to make a girl sort of be pissed off, but also to get her to pay attention to someone who maybe she wouldn't practically look at in the first place. You see, in life, the Lord puts people on our paths to teach us things, to validate who we are, to help us to grow into better human beings. And if we're not actually talking with someone, it doesn't mean that love doesn't exist there. If we choose to say talk to the hand, that's our own immaturity. If we practically say, hey, let's get together over a meal and talk this out, that's a professional, that's a person of maturity, and we all know it. Those who sort of flip people off in their text messaging or in their Twitter accounts or in their Facebook accounts don't really do people justice. And I can remember long ago, I didn't really understand that Facebook was seen by everybody, so I made some comments, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I might have just embarrassed someone I love very much, and I didn't mean to. But I learned that over time. Social media is not an easy tool, but we also have federal laws that protect our right to communications on telephone lines, which is what all social media are put on. Now, I'm talking about a lot of different topics because this might be my last broadcast for a little while. I want you to really look at the upcoming presidential campaign. I want you to really think about, who do you want in the office? Do you want someone who's always allowing other people to validate and invalidate your life? Telling you how to live, what to do with your body, and practically how to spend your funds, or where you can shop, or what you can do? Or do you want the opportunities to have free will? Free will is something that the Lord gives us, but we also know that free will can be full of satanic worship in terms of the vices that we love, our technology that we plow our heads into when we're sitting there literally with our children and our spouse. We also have those other types of codes of conduct that we have to pay attention to. There's certain things we don't talk about with our professionals, but a lot of times those lines are being delineated because everybody's linking to personal Facebook accounts, which opens our world and their worlds into personal lives, which maybe that HR director doesn't need to see. In life, we have moments of time to find out where propriety begins and ends for our lives. At the same time, we have people on the news who need more stories about real-life harms that are going on because police and firemen and other people involved in community development and community commerce and community administration are not paying attention to federal laws. You see, there's lots of stories out there, but we don't always get them in the news. We hear them hearsay. We hear them through gossip. We hear them through channels. But sometimes those very moments of gossiping about things going on in our life actually work to harm another human being later in life. Because that person might eventually meet that individual, and then all they remember is the stories that we told from our perspective, as opposed to that impartial, balanced told story that a journalist is trained to put out in the world of each side of the story and then the factual middle ground. That also might be God's point of view if you're a person of faith. What would God do in this situation? How would Jesus walk his faith in this moment of time is rarely something that people think about anymore. Very few people submit their life to the Lord in terms of becoming a priest or a nun in those sort of religious, practical, policy-driven places. But in the life of a godly person, we're looking at, how do I live my life to the fullest? How do I gain the most out of this opportunity? How do I make sure the relationships I have are healthy, loving, and kind, and practically uplifting, not only to my own soul, but to other people's souls? Now, what I'm really talking about here are the rights of the Constitution. I'm putting it in very practical terms because people forget that your rights are not my rights, and my rights are most certainly not your rights. My right to choose what I decide to put in my bags to carry with me for my life is my right. It's not your right to get into my bags, take things out, take them home with you, and steal them from me. That violates the Fourth Amendment. It also interferes with my right to do things in the world. It interferes with my right to sell things. It interferes with my right to make a living. It interferes with practically my right to feed myself. It interferes with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs that I need to endure in my life, which usually begins with the basic common things of sleeping, eating, and pooping in the land, but also then is magnified in the self-actualization phase, where we get to choose our own professions, choose our own employees that we want to work with, and openly make some life choices that sometimes work out and other times don't. When someone says to me, you don't understand what's been going on in my life, I simply want to say, please tell me, and I'll pray for you. I'll try and help you problem solve it. I'll help you try and strategize your way out of it. But if you don't tell me, if you just throw it at me, I don't know what to do with that mess. You see, all it is emotionalism that doesn't get any practically performing opportunity to do anything kind, loving, or enduring to help a person move forward in their life. You see, the people who help others move forward in life are the ones that are valued, the ones that are loyal, and the ones that really know what God's plan is for everyone, not at all. What it means is, I'm not going to harm another life with my own thoughts for that person's life. That practically the only life I'm ultimately responsible for at this moment in time is my own. But my own life has an impact on other people's lives, and I need to make sure that I am not only liable to the Lord in heaven in terms of, am I trying to lord over someone's life and harm their life in some way that's not my right to do? Or am I uplifting that person towards the goals and aspirations that the Heavenly Mother and Father have put within that individual's soul to move them forward in a way that they can't go on without us in their life? And that creates a burning, loving relationship. There are plenty of women who need the taming of the shrew experience, that they're so accustomed to getting any man that they want that then when they meet a man who puts his foot down and says, no, I'm not going to play that game. You'll either like me for my soul as it is, loving you as I do, or you will simply go on with your life making a mess out of it because you think God's not paying attention to you is not true, that openly the Lord in heaven is. Now in life we have moments of time to prove who we are in front of God or in front of our family or in front of our neighbors or in front of our social group. I don't know. You figure out what you want to prove yourself in front of. But the reality is that a reporter is supposed to report on the truths of life. That the truths of life are that our U.S. Constitution gives us inalienable rights is not at all the truth. It gives us a certain level of rights. The international human rights treaties, however, give us inalienable rights. That we're all created equal, that we have a say in our life, that we have a say in our physical health care, and our mental health care, in our technological uses, and everything else that many social media companies, many clinics, many hospitals are starting to try and take away from us. As if we don't have the right to say, no, you may not utilize the photographs of my body and my nakedness for your students in this land. You see, we have pornographers that are not allowed to do that, and yet hospitals are getting away with it without our right to say no. Sure, they've got opt-out clauses, but it takes an awful lot of extra paperwork to say no, as opposed to just a checkbox. The answer is no, period. The answer is yes, okay. But in life, most people want their privacy of their health care kept private. And when that doesn't happen, when little employees at clinics and hospitals can look up our stuff, but they can't turn the computer to show it to us, who the actual records belong to, it's outlandish, just like in the DMV. Now, I'm giving a lot of story ideas out there. I'm giving a lot of concepts out there for you to think about, but openly I'm saying in life we have moments of time to prove who we are in the house of God for those of people of faith and spirituality, but prove who we are to the people who love us most by simply acknowledging that either A, they love us, or B, we sort of feel okay with them loving us. Now, how hard is it to reject love? I have to wonder that question because I openly have not received a rejection to a marriage proposal that I put out there. That individual is my lawful, rightful, legal heir to my estate and every stitch of fabric of clothing and property that I own that's in a storage unit. If I die tomorrow, that individual receives it all. There's only a few obligations with that receipt. She's got to bury me cheaply, which is fine, and I want to be cremated, and that will make it even cheaper for her. But the reality is, then she's got to figure a way to take in my stuff and sell it off for her benefit. How tough is that? Isn't that the most loving and kind thing a man can do for someone he loves, is leave them a legacy of whatever it might be? My life insurance policy might be paltry compared to the men she's accustomed to dealing with, but it's still my right to choose. You have the right to choose those things for your life, and if you're of any age over 45, you really should be starting to put that crap in place because we don't know when God's going to say, time to come home now to heaven. But I talk like a pastor, I talk like a reporter, I talk like a person of intelligence, and you, too, can do the same. I have the right to promote this audio file and instead of a video because it's easier to upload. It's faster is not true. It's just I don't always like to be on camera. And sometimes I just don't have a good hair day in terms of my beard. So in life, we've got moments of time to make a difference for someone. How you make a difference for someone is to acknowledge their greatest gifts, their good strengths, and openly the love they feel in their soul for your life. And once you've done that, then maybe, just maybe, you've honored God's plan for your life in heaven. Thanks for listening.